Welcome everyone, I'm the captain, Ross Memphis Pambrun, and with me is the co-host, Lawrence Gervais. We're broadcasting from Calgary in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We would also like to acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Kani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. We would also like to say thank you to our First Nation friends, to the Métis settlements, and to our Métis brothers and sisters. We'd like to give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for the time she allows us to be here to share her bounty. And now, folks, from the President and the Captain, let's get the wheel squeaking. And with a nice, hot, sunny day here in southern Alberta, in the beautiful city of Calgary and Airdrie, folks, thanks for coming and joining together with us, gathering I like to call it, on the Squeaky Wheel. As always, with me, my friend, the President Lawrence Gervais, and folks, I'm Ross Memphis Pambrun, and I represent the Memphis group, and here we are having our usual weekly conversation from a Métis perspective. Lawrence, as always happy to see you. Couple of wet, cold days we've had here, southern Alberta. And I know the sun is shining today. Lord knows how it'll change over the course of 12 hours, but it sure is nice and warm when it comes as we navigate this difficult time in our lives here through the pandemic. And hopefully most of us doing what we could to celebrate with our families that are close with us, the dear departed. But it was Mother's Day. Lawrence, tell us a little bit about how your weekend went.
Well, I mean, a lot of, I guess, setting up video game consoles to cleaning up to feeding these 2 5-year-old kids. Yeah, pretty busy. But, we did have time to Zoom with the family and, got to see my ma and pa again. But hopefully I can see them in person pretty soon here.
Yeah, I ended up buying my mama some nice bottles of wine and sharing a little bit of that. But folks, we know, we read about it. You can't do anything without seeing it. It is a difficult time. Thank you for all of those Albertans who are patient, who are taking the responsibility to do the best. There are those dissidents out there, those people who I wish there was more tickets handed out when it comes to those individuals who are not following the rules. In a way, we have to pick up some of the burden for those individuals. And I don't like it. Oh, there's restaurants that I miss going to. There's places that I miss sitting outside of, sitting inside of, and all the hugs that I haven't had from family or been able to share with them for a while. But we are working our way through it. And Lawrence, I know we seem to talk about this at least weekly, but it's really important. How are we looking when it comes to the M&A clinic? Because we're on track.
Yeah, we're opening up our booking very, very quickly here the next couple of days, and our clinic will be on the 29th and 30th at our office. So that is 1530 27th Ave Northeast. And also maybe we can throw the hotline on here too, if that's okay. And we're looking at our own booking system here at the Métis Nation. We currently have limited supply of Moderna vaccine, but we're definitely ready and available to give it out at that time.
And folks, one thing I highly recommend is, as soon as we've released this information, make sure you reach out to us. But also, if you do book somewhere else, whether that be your pharmacy, whether that be through AHS, folks, if you end up going to one of those, please call and update that clinic that you have received your vaccine so that they can find the spot for somebody else. It isn't always just the fear of the wastage of vaccine, but it does make it a lot easier for people. There are people who are waiting that have given their information to all of these different agencies saying, I will take the first available vaccine as soon as it comes out. So if you do manage to get a time and you follow through, take the jab, make sure you let those other agencies know. But I'm excited, Lawrence. We haven't had any chance yet to showcase our office. And though this isn't the pancake breakfast, and this isn't a Métis fest that's happening in our office. In a way, I like to think that this is going to be the first most valuable use of our office that we get to share with our community.
No, we're pretty excited. And then, also we do have a relationship for the future after that. And that is with Sixica and the Friendship Center here in Calgary. We'll definitely be a part of their immunization clinic. And that's currently at Best Western, so their mass clinic. So we're working out the parameters for that. So to continue on, our 2-day M&A clinic is hosted by Métis Nation. And then the one after that will be in partnership with Calgary Catholic, Sixica, and Friendship Center. So we're pretty excited about that. And Okaki Health.
And now, just to confirm, you said May
29th and 30th.
29th and 30th. Yeah, thank you. And I know, folks, we'll get that information up on our website, but we will continue to remind you here on the Squeaky Wheel. Make sure you start sharing it. This is a very, very valuable tool. Lawrence, thank you for the effort that you put in. Thanks to Regan, I know, who would be involved in this. This is a big step. This is a great way for us to connect with our community and share that.
Yes.
Now, planting in Alberta. This was one thing I wanted to bring up. This is this one time of the year, as I mentioned earlier, and folks, this isn't just for us here in Southern Alberta. This is for everybody in Northern Alberta. In a way, this is for anybody who lives on this side of the mountains from Vancouver, and on as soon as you hit pretty much the Red River area in Manitoba going west, the May long weekend. Like, it's unbelievable how the swings happen in these prairies. All of a sudden, it is sunny and hot, and if you take your shirt off, you're going to burn within 10, 15 minutes if your arms are uncovered at all. And then all of a sudden, the weather drops by 20 degrees, 30 degrees, the snow's on the ground, and it's always been in my family, we wait to put anything in the ground, flowers and or such, until the May long weekend.
No, I firmly agree with that. Don't they say, as a principle, 3 days of double-digit weather and then you're allowed to plant? The problem with, this is retail, Superstore and Canadian Tire, and they have their gardening, ready to open here, and then people go out and they buy all their stuff, and then come home and everything gets damaged, right? So, as a principle, you should wait till it gets a little bit warmer.
And I think as soon as we see those plants at any one of these stores, it's as though it's almost like you can buy the spring. If all of us buy enough of this stuff, maybe we'll get spring to come a little earlier. But we always get stung. So, folks, make sure you watch. Unfortunately, we don't do this daily, so we can't provide you our daily updates on whether or not you should be putting your plants out there. But give us enough time, folks, and with enough Métis conversation, we'll have it. If you have any recommendations, or if you have your own Métis almanac that could tell us a little bit about when we should be planting, make sure you email us, tsw@métis3.org. Happy to share that information. Happy to share your stories. One of the ones I want to share this week, Lawrence, was I know one of our youth coordinators in the office, Kristen Acuna, is working on, I saw a recipe book, and I think it actually came out in the provincial Voyageur Voice saying, hey, we want to do this. And folks, it's not limited in age, though it's sort of a youth initiative. I ended up connecting with my father, George, who's been on the show before, Aboriginal veteran. And I said, Dad, let's put in a recipe together. Him and I like to try and participate in all the different Métis events and things like that. So we ended up putting in a fried bannock. Now, folks, I still want you to send in all your bannock recipes as well to Kristen, because I know she's going to want to share them. But we put in a few stories. And it's funny, when my dad's now, I think he's 80. And when you connect with an 80-year-old, you'd almost think that when he reviews the article that he's been a part of, that he's writing this for the New York Times. I'm like, Dad, this needs to be good, but it's okay that it has our voice, our flavor in it. We threw a few pictures, but the editing process of these 2 paragraphs must have been 8 hours worth of work for me with my dad. But I think we came up with a fun story. Time he used to make bannock when he was in the military to help support the other brothers and sisters and soldiers out there that he was serving with. But I'm looking forward to it. So folks, when you see those things, participate. And in my case, connecting with my elder father, he enjoyed sharing that conversation.
Well, I'll just have to say that being long-winded is not genetic, so you have nothing to worry about, Ross. Just so you know. But no, yeah, you're right. Everybody has a different version of Bannock, and even the other nations, our First Nation cousins, have different versions. But it all matters to where you were at the time and what could you afford. I mean, a lot of those ingredients are very, very basic because that's all we had in the past, right? A lot of these ingredients weren't accessible like they are now. So you have different flavors, different varieties, and modern Bannock is the new system in place. And I know there's First Nation restaurants in Vancouver, for instance, that serve different types of flavored Bannock and things like that, different ways of making it. And now hotels offer it to, certainly when there's an Indigenous function, they'll have a Bannock maker there, which, when you're serving a bunch of elders.
Yeah, some of the restaurants have started to share some of the Indigenous Bannocks. And, I think that's actually really, really fun. Almost a neat recommendation, Lawrence, in that when I don't want to discourage anybody from sending in. Sometimes it's different flour. Sometimes it's different preparation. Sometimes it's different temperatures. If anything, perhaps what we should be doing on the show is bringing on a new Bannock every week in order to try. That does seem like a pretty big commitment. So let's just stick with what we've got so far.
Well, I mean, it's all those carbs too. I'm not sure if you want to carb overload on Bannock all the time, tasting it.
That's true. I guess at your age, we should be starting to concern ourselves with heart disease. Capote.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Let's talk that program.
Yeah, our fashion program commenced. We definitely announced our 5 winners. We're just waiting for the video to come out. There's a big promotion around it and a bunch of other things, but we have purchased some of the designs already, and we'll have a traveling Métis Capote fashion show here from Region 3, which we're pretty excited about. It's just too bad we couldn't have these live events to show it all, but they'll definitely be archived and brought to these things later on. So we're pretty excited.
Well, because the phone didn't seem to ring, unless I should still be watching it for my name. But once again, folks, it was just, I jumped on the capote making because I thought I didn't know enough about the history of that beautiful garment. And the one thing, as I think I've mentioned on this show before, was blanket stitching. Now that I see that in the historic coats, now I can pick it out anywhere. So it was a lot of fun. And I get to enjoy the rest of the journey when we gather to share the conversation about those who did make the finals, I guess we would call it. And I look forward to seeing who the winner is going to be, because it's going to be a tough choice. They're all beautiful designs.
Yeah, well, I mean, at this point in time, till it's announced, you still have a chance. You're still in the mix.
Yeah, I won't worry too much about answering the call. I think at this point, I'm getting a pity invite to whatever the next event is going to be. But again, I think that if I didn't get those, I wouldn't get to attend most of the things that I get involved with. So Olympics, that's one thing I wanted to throw out, as almost as challenging and as constant the conversation has been about COVID and our start of our pandemic back in March 2020, as we were leading up to it, the Olympics. It was pretty much, you in one breath you said something about COVID, and the next breath you said something about the Olympics. And I don't know, Japan, everybody really wants to push forward. Oh, and Lord knows I want this for our athletes that have committed so much of their time, their life. This is their time to showcase, because from what I've started to learn, the older I get, it doesn't get easier. I'm still healing my ruptured Achilles, but for these folks, we all want it to happen. I just think the Olympics was such a large experience, more than just the sport. It was also the connection with the world, but I don't know how they're going to control it. And the narratives that you see when it comes to, we foster inclusion, we foster conversation. The world is still stuck in the dialogue of, how there's a New Zealand weightlifter who's transitioning, and where should she have the ability to compete? It's complicated. These are all right. When it comes to sport, there's one more conversation of inclusion, and I don't have the answers, folks. I defer to those people who are the experts, but that's been something that the Olympics have been seeing coming for a while. But I enjoy the sport. This is the times you get to see some stuff that you've never seen before. But yeah, I don't know. What are we going to do?
Well, you can postpone the games. They did it for a year. You also want to make sure your Olympics have equal value to all the athletes. So, if there's a disqualification, what does that mean? Because they got COVID, they have to sit out. Then you're not having the best of the best at the table, right? Because of this virus that's going around. So, you have to think of that also. The doping scandals to all that other stuff, that you could throw that in the mix, and you're having a large congregation of people breathing heavily around each other. There is a risk there because this is an airborne disease, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Everything is shut down in so many places in the world. And yet, and again, this is one of those things that's meant to connect the world, right? The Olympics, this was a priority for nations. And yet, yeah, I'm not too sure how we're going to navigate it. And then again, all of those unique questions that all of these communities are still trying to answer. And I just have to support, hopefully the brightest and the smartest people to bring the conversation towards these unique or new conversations. Hopefully that supports all athletes. Hopefully that supports all inclusion and diversity, so that people feel as though that they're getting a chance to share in their sport and connect with the people within their sport community.
But also at the same time, I've been a part of the Vancouver Olympic Committee stuff, and I was never really happy with how they were impacting, our Indigenous communities. Sure, it drives the business, but definitely displaces a lot of people. And people are still feeling the impacts of the Olympics in that area. So, it's sometimes for me, I'm always 50-50 when it comes to the Olympics, in a sense that, you have all these impacts to these communities. Is it beneficial or is it non-beneficial? Right. And you see the non-beneficial side quite a bit often in my community versus seeing it the benefit to some other business people. Right. So is that what's driving it? Is the economics of the Olympics? Is that what it is? Certainly people's health are certainly a valuable concern for me, especially if I had community members there. And how do you prepare for that? And as far as I know, the Olympics in Japan, they're sending more nurses there as a precaution, right? You're going to have more nurses on site, more health things. So it's just so much stuff that they have to plan around the Olympics, and just to wait another year might be the best option, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But you bring up some really good points. The economics doesn't always support everybody. And, we've seen that before. I couldn't tell you the last time that an Olympics ended up being economically beneficial, but it does connect in a community, but it doesn't necessarily connect it in an economics. We all want to suggest that it was very, very positive when it comes to how well it was funding programs and such. But in the end, when you break it down, the dollars that were spent, it's often never recovered.
Well, exactly. But even to bid on the Olympics, you're spending millions of dollars just to ask, right? Just to be at the table. And I find that a little bit, disheartening too. But I'm not in charge of the Olympic Committee. Maybe it's just a big cash cow to me for all I know, but whatever.
Well, if we start a local Métis Olympics, Lawrence, I will ensure that you're nominated to the board. Now, it doesn't seem as though that we're in any likelihood of any of us here in Canada on our way to Japan. But what about Kananaskis? Are we even on our way to Kananaskis? Because all of a sudden, our province was always, this is here for you, Alberta.
Well, me and you are fine because
now,
we both have our
this is here for you,
harvesting
Alberta.
cards. We both have our harvesting cards. We can go. But the ones who don't, that's the main issue because not everybody has that. Not everybody's a settlement member. And the problem is, Alberta Parks comes to our office, Region 3, Southern Alberta, to have these engagements, these consultations, to be a part of their plans, as they say. But when they start to implement their plan, we're excluded. It just doesn't seem right. Why am I sharing information to you when you're going to turn around and not allow any of our members to be a part of that program? Right? And that's the main concern that we have with Alberta government. Now, Otipimisiwak, that term, what that means, people who own themselves, and we were gifted that term when the fur trade was ending and we were kind of becoming free men, right? Well, do we depend on government as a Métis nation? Like, we have to understand that. Do we obviously depend on our own because that's who's going to take care of us. But are we going to rely on Alberta government, federal government, our municipal governments to really be there for the Métis nation? And that is the big question, Mark, with all our Métis people currently, because now we're starting to progress and be a part of policy and be a part of legislation. But when there's active decisions that are here now to this day in 2021 that are excluding the Métis from programming, well, then, yeah, we do have a concern with that. And Kananaskis is just one individual program of a lot more, right?
Well, and actually, okay, that's a great point. All of a sudden we look and, I guess to your point, we're welcome. And if we weren't making the strides we were making now, we would be already further behind. And yet, it is just, as you point out, it just goes to show when the government feels a program is successful or it's their determination and they're the ones who say, welcome to the table, but it shouldn't be welcome to the table. It should be, hey, it's nice to see you at the table that we have to sit at together in order to have conversation. So they shouldn't be saying, welcome to the table. They should be saying, hey, glad you're here before us because we're going to be sitting here together. So I think I understand that a little bit more. And if we don't continue to make that conversation now, all that's going to happen is they're going to push us back from the table regularly.
Well, I mean, I'm one of those people too, and it's probably ingrained to me in my ancestry too. I mean, I have 3 ancestors that were here before the Northwest Mounted Police showed up. And then they always tell us, well, we weren't here. There was nobody here, which is moronic to me. Because if they weren't there or they weren't here, well, then I wouldn't exist on this earth right now. Right? So, to make sort of complimenting, who understanding that is. And I didn't really know those ancestors until I started this job here in Southern Alberta and started serving the community. But I'm like, yeah, they were here. And there's no way around it. I mean, I have more historical data on those ancestors more than any others because of my work here. But I'm not alone. There's a lot of more Métis people out there that have ancestry here that really should delve into the Southern Alberta piece and put their names forward and let's sit down and have a coffee. So if you're an M&A member and you know of some ancestors out there, let me know because that's valuable information. And it's a good tool for me to use when I have to consult and negotiate with government.
And we've commented about it before. It's not like we haven't seen archaeological finds that show that there were Métis within the Southern Alberta region. We have artifacts. We often talk about us, and we should be connecting a bit more with the Glenbow and looking at our own artifacts and trying to work on sharing them. But, again, it's a difficult time. We're trying to figure out the best way to navigate this. But we know it's there and we're getting prepared. of how are we going to share some of this messaging, share this communication, so that it's our citizens who also help us step up and say to the government, we were here. And, one of the things that I came across recently too was, for example, on a we were here is there's an interesting survey that's going out for Indigenous wildland firefighters. And we're getting into a tougher time of the season. We're starting to see more. I often comment that our agency is trying to work more towards protecting our communities through wildfire protection and mitigation. But these are opportunities for our citizens to lend their voice. So folks, if you want that survey, make sure you just reach out to us, tsw@métis3.org, or if you know anybody who spent any time within the Indigenous, or is Indigenous and had a role within the Alberta wildfire community, we would love to get some of their information. It looks like a great survey. And I'm professional, so I don't fall within that same realm that they're looking for. But yeah, I think it's our citizens that have to be a part of the conversation. They're the backbone.
Well, it's also a piece of reconciliation that they're not checking off. Really, at the end of the day, they're picking and choosing the communities they want to speak to, and they're using Hersecorn as a base for their decisions. Well, I'm sorry, but Hersecorn was a failure to me, right? And so what they have to understand is, if you want to build a good relationship, solid relationship with an Indigenous group like the Métis Nation, well, then speak to us. Try to understand it. Go through the steps of, having a historical piece. Bring an academic in to understand it. I don't know. I really don't know what the steps are for them. I know what the steps are for us. But really, at the end of the day, they have to start listening to it, because those Métis bureaucrats who are sitting in their government are advising them poorly. And that's a concern for us.
Yeah, all these industries should be very aware of the fact that if you bring us in earlier into the conversation, your project's probably going to keep moving forward as you progress. Trouble is when you don't involve, Indigenous or Métis conversation, all of a sudden, when we don't know what's going on, the project's very likely going to stop, and until everybody has an understanding. So no, I appreciate, that's an important message that we try to share with our business partners, saying, folks, bring us to the table. That way we're going to be a part of the conversation and help you keep it moving forward in the most positive and respectful way. And I guess one of the things that I wanted to, that we're going to end on is, trying to monitor how I can never figure it out, what always drives our oil prices. We talk about how we're trying to work in all areas towards clean energy. Well, now there's more cyber attacks happening in the oil world. And it's frightening, because these are either ransomware or these are control attacks, and they're shutting down pipelines. Well, all of a sudden, if you shut down a pipeline in the middle of summer, it's maybe not the end of the world, but we start shutting down different, gases, natural gases, or other, risk commodities, or our valuable commodities, that if they get shut down, because then all of a sudden you start to see oil prices spiking because these cyber attacks are happening. We, folks, this is our province supports and relies on its citizens. It's got a long history when it comes to working with the fossil fuels that are available. But we also need to, work with these agencies to make sure that we protect Mother Earth, support Mother Earth, and again, always keep this conversation going. But yeah, the oil industry has just got one more thing thrown at it when it comes to the idea that it has to try and manage this, navigate the new world as well of technology.
Well, I'm a firm belief in environmental assessment, because that's sort of what we have to delve into in terms of protecting our natural resources. And sorry, I shouldn't say that, our air, land, and water specifically, not our natural resources, because those goes to the company. But
No, but we know usually what you were recommending. Yeah.
So, I mean, we do have to protect our environment, number one. And if there's
Yeah.
technologies to actually do that, to, make it easier for us as Indigenous communities to monitor them, to police them a little bit more. So we're there right from when there's an accident or there's an emergency response. And certainly stuff like satellite monitoring to drone monitoring to all those things. And if it was an Indigenous company out there that did all that, then, us as members would be comfortable knowing that there's an Indigenous person or company that was doing all this work, right? So, because at least it's one step further ahead than what we have now, which is we're notified when spills happened. We send our people out there to monitor it, the cleanup. But then what is always the preemptive strike? What is the technology? Are they testing lines properly? Are they testing, are they looking for spills before they become major spills? Like, how are they doing this, right? And that's what we have to look at as Indigenous communities.
Right. Yeah. And that we need to make sure we have our people available so that when they, hopefully when energy is bringing these conversations to us, we can start to recognize that. You're right. How do we know even at what stage, these groups are at unless they connect with us? And hopefully we can be, again, part of that conversation. Lawrence, I'm going to suggest that's number 42 in the book. If you can believe it, folks, all I suggest is that you make sure you keep watching us, email us, make sure you click that little red button that says subscribe, because number 50 is on its way. And there, folks, there's gonna be fireworks. Now, could very well just be sparklers, but I'm not gonna lie to you. We are going to make it fun. But Lawrence, as always, I thoroughly enjoy our conversation. You can always reach out to us. We always want to have a coffee with everybody we can. Lawrence says that all the time. tsw@métis3.org. Make sure you hit our website, www.métis3.org. Look for the information. Follow up, folks, on what's happening with the clinics that are coming. And Lawrence, thank you for your time. Thank you for our connection. And thank you for our Mother Earth, for sharing her bounty with us. Folks, from the Squeaky Wheel, Lawrence, the president, and Ross Memphis Pambrun, and Jason, who's behind the scenes, best wishes to y'all.